Hello and welcome to the news tonight, your daily roundup of all the news from India and around the world. I'm Ishan Russell, and our focus tonight is on the ordinance route that the government is following to push through key reform legislation, today amending the Land Acquisition Act. We'll be discussing what's the impact of this a little later in the show, but first up, the headlines we're tracking right now. Cabinet approves ordinance on land acquisition bill and sets 6 months target to regularize unauthorized colonies in Delhi. Opposition cries foul over second set of ordinances within a week. Centre confirms blast in Bengaluru was a terror attack, directs the National Investigating Agency to launch an investigation. Security has been stepped up in the city. The Prime Minister wants to take Make in India to the next level. Finance Minister calls for easing norms and taxation to help more investment and business in the country. And India conveys strong concern over Pakistan's lack of action after a court cancels 2611 accused Zakiur Rahman Lakhvi's detention order. A top story tonight, an ordinance to amend the relevant sections in the Land Acquisition Act has been approved by the Union Cabinet today. It has also approved authorization of colonies in New Delhi in the next 6 months. Now, this is the second set of ordinances that this government has passed after the winter session ended last week. The opposition has raised objection to the government taking the ordinance route to push through its economic agenda.
Farmers will now get higher compensation for the exempted acts as well in the Land Acquisition Relief and Rehabilitation Act 2013. Relevant sections of the act were amended in an ordinance approved by the cabinet.
Where higher compensation will continue and higher compensation and R&R will be applicable even to all exempted acts. At the same time, the procedural rigors will be loosened or eased in relation to 5 purposes.
Announcing the decision to amend the Act, Jaitley said same relief and rehabilitation package will apply to exempted purposes as well. The government has also added Section 10A to the Act, which defines 5 purposes which will also be exempt. Cabinet has also approved the regularization of 895 colonies of Delhi which have come up till June 1st, 2014, benefiting 60 lakh people.
तो जो पहले कट ऑफ डेट 31 मार्च 2002 तक की थी, उसको 1 जून 2014 तक एक्सटेंड कर दिया गया है.
This is the second in series of ordinance approved by the cabinet within a week. It had approved ordinance on coal and insurances earlier, much to the disliking of the opposition parties. They have slammed the government again, accusing it of resorting to undemocratic ways to push through key reforms bills.
पार्लियामेंट की बेइज्जती कर रही है. पार्लियामेंट का सेशन अभी ख़त्म होके चुका है. सरकार पार्लियामेंट में कानून बनाने की बजाय ऑर्डिनेंसेस के ज़रिए सरकार चलाना चाहती है.
Ordinance route is an unusual, exceptional and abnormal route which can be used only in genuine emergencies. That you resort to a number of ordinances just after the parliament session ends and barely 2 months before the next one is to come has no justification. What is the national emergency that these things have to be done right now?
Decision on regularization of colonies also drew sharp criticism from parties like Aam Aadmi Party. The national capital is set for fresh elections within months. Parties feel the decision could influence the verdict of the polls. With Bureau Inputs, Vishal Dahiya, Rajya Sabha TV.
And Aditi Fadnis, political editor at the Business Standard, joins us to help us understand why the government is resorting to the ordinance route. Aditi, it seems the last week of Parliament, what we saw over there, left the government with no option.
Well, that's partly correct. It's true that the government does not have a majority in the Rajya Sabha and in fact probably will not have a majority till 2017. So any move that it tries to push through Rajya Sabha will be defeated in the Rajya Sabha. On the land acquisition law, the Congress and other parties are absolutely clear that they want no amendment in the land acquisition law whatsoever. So then the question that we have to ask ourselves is, how will this ordinance finally pass muster? This is one law which changes in which will be resisted by the entire opposition without reservation and without unequivocally.
All right.
So I think for this law, the government will eventually have to bring it before a joint session, but that also is not so easy, because a joint session of parliament can only take place when the president agrees that a bill which has been passed by one house cannot be passed by the other house and actually falls in the other house.
Okay.
So there are many complexities in this, but you can continue repromulgating the ordinance as many times as you want. The last time the government repromulgated, and this was the previous government,
right,
repromulgated the ordinance thrice, was in the case of SEBI, which was empowered with search and seizure powers. So it was repromulgated 3 times. So there's no upper limit on how many times you can repromulgate the ordinance, but there are time bars by in which you have to present it before Parliament.
All right, but Aditi, now talking about this as a political sticking point, I mean, we've seen the opposition being a little bit united, be it the Janta Parivar and the Congress or the left coming together in the House. So, I mean, this becomes a major political point for the opposition, and we can perhaps see the opposition taking this as one of the major programs.
It's interesting you should say that. Certainly, in one way, it cements opposition unity, because putting aside political differences, the Trinamool and the left parties alike will oppose the changes that have been made in the ordinance. So you could say that the government is actually cementing unity among the opposition parties. But having said that, there is no doubt at all that several Congress chief ministers privately have told us that they find many of the elements in the land acquisition law as it exists today extremely irksome. They find that that investment is being held back, and projects amounting to 3 trillion rupees are held up because it's so difficult to acquire land. Now, whether the measures that the new amendment which has been passed by an ordinance, whether that will bring investment, we don't really know. But the opposition is saying that all it will do is lead to impoverishment of the peasantry, which will, in 5 cases, will not be required to, if they lose their land, many of the rehabilitation measures that they have been promised in the law will not apply to that category of land. So, I mean, it cuts both ways. You need to get investment, you need to make the investment route more attractive and make land available. And if you don't make land available, you will not have any manufacturing. If you don't have manufacturing, your excise duty collections will fall. If excise duty collections fall, government goes into deficit. If government goes into deficit, roads and bridges and hospitals are not built.
All right, it seems to remind me of, as one of the poems had said, a vicious cycle, so to say. But thank you very much, Aditi, for coming and explaining the nuances of this ordinance route that the government is taking to pass through key legislation. Thanks very much for coming in. All right, moving on now. The centre has confirmed that the IED blast in Bengaluru on Sunday evening was a terror attack. Now, the Home Ministry, however, said that the nature of the blast and the people behind it could be ascertained only after a thorough probe. The NIA has joined the probe with the state police.
Hours after an IED blast in Bangalore's Church Street area that killed 1 woman, security has been tightened across the city. The state government announced a slew of steps to beef up security, including bringing in the Public Safety Act and installation of CCTV cameras at all vulnerable places. Chief Minister K. Siddaramaiah chaired a high-level meeting to review the security situation, after which he announced the creation of a separate cadre for intelligence gathering.
We are going to make a separate cadre, and also we are going to recruit engineers, and a special training will be given to them.
Meanwhile, investigators are probing the possible role of band outfit Simi after the centre termed it a terror attack.
If it's happening in Bangalore, so we have to see the link. If it's the same module which is working there, definitely it's a terror attack.
From all the angles, from all the sides, we are approaching this blast, and our people, they have gone there within Karnataka and outside Karnataka also. We have sent our teams, and we are awaiting any definite clue.
The centre has assured all possible help to the Karnataka government, directing it to install CCTV cameras at all major public places in the IT hub.
सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट की किसी भी प्रकार के यदि असिस्टेंस की आवश्यकता है तो वह असिस्टेंस हम प्रोवाइड करने को पूरी तरह से तैयार हैं। और इस घटना के संबंध में भी कर्नाटक के चीफ मिनिस्टर से मैंने जानकारी हासिल की है।
The low-intensity blast outside a restaurant in the heart of Bangalore on Sunday claimed 1 life and injured 2 people. It is the 4th such attack in the city since 2008. The IT hub was the target of blasts in 2010 and 2013 as well. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
The Prime Minister Narendra Modi made yet another strong pitch for his Make in India campaign today in Delhi. Speaking at a national conference, Modi said he wants to take the initiative to the next level by trying to make India a global brand. He called for balanced development in the country and laid emphasis on responsibility, ownership, accountability and discipline as the key to his government's culture.
हम दुनिया में इंडिया ब्रांड कैसे डेवलप कर सकते हैं? अगर दुनिया में इंडिया ब्रांड डेवलप करना है तो मेक इन इंडिया, उसके साथ एक हैशलाइन लगेगी, जीरो डिफेक्ट। अगर जीरो डिफेक्ट नहीं है तो हम ग्लोबल मार्केट में अचीव नहीं कर सकते। हमारी कोशिश है एबीसीडी कल्चर से एक ऐसे रोड मैप पर जाएं जिसमें सक्सेस ही सक्सेस हो। और जब मैं सक्सेस ही सक्सेस के रोड की बात करता हूं तो मैं उस रोड की चर्चा करता हूं जिसमें ROAD, R रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी, O ओनरशिप, A अकाउंटेबिलिटी, D डिसिप्लिन। ये रोड मैप पर हम आगे बढ़ना चाहते हैं।
And the government wants more steps to facilitate ease of doing business as part of its Make in India initiative. Finance Minister Arun Jaitley sought removal of entry barriers and hinted at tax reforms to boost investment sentiment in India. Inaugurating a workshop on Make in India campaign, he admitted that India's slack manufacturing growth remains a challenge and backed radical reforms for spurring growth.
Thank you very much, sir, for this.
Anticipating a surge in the growth rate in 2015, the Finance Minister underscored several initiatives of the government to facilitate ease of doing business in the country. Amid contracting industrial production, Arun Jaitley also nudged for lower cost of capital to boost growth in manufacturing sector.
We need to ensure that those sectors of the industry which are today starving on account of funds, we are in a position to provide adequate liquidity to those industries.
Commerce and Industry Minister Nirmala Sitharaman asserted that with the installation of the new government, inflow of FDI into India rose by 25% in the April-October period of the current fiscal. Prime Minister Narendra Modi launched an ambitious push to kickstart India's manufacturing sector, lifting its share of India's GDP to 25% from 15% by 2022. A poor show by manufacturing sector dragged the overall industrial production, which contracted by 4.2% in October, the sharpest decline in 2 years. Finance Minister also rejected RBI Governor's comments on Make in India campaign. Referring to Raghuram Rajan's remarks where he said that Make in India should focus on domestic demand, Arun Jaitley said that it was important to produce low-cost quality products, whether they're sold in India or abroad. Reporting from Delhi, Kriti Mishra for Rajya Sabha Television.
And Prime Minister Narendra Modi chaired a high-level meeting on the Smart Cities initiative today in Delhi. The meeting marked the launch of consultations on the project to build 100 such cities across the country. He asked the Ministry of Urban Development to convene a workshop of all central and state urban development authorities soon for consultations. Favouring identification of parameters that could be laid down for smart cities, the Prime Minister asserted that these cities should be hubs of economic activity. He asked officials to identify the basics of infrastructure, quality of life and citizen-centric services that would be essential to develop smart cities. He also said that waste management and wastewater treatment would be important for the development of these smart cities. Well, time for a very quick break right now, but coming up on the other side, the search continues for the missing AirAsia flight. The worst is feared for the 162 people aboard that fatal flight. Welcome back. This is the news tonight. Now, the PDP will meet Jammu and Kashmir Governor N.N. Vohra on Wednesday to discuss ways of forming the next government. The PDP emerged as the single largest party in the assembly polls last week with 28 seats. The BJP came second with 25 seats. The governor had invited both the parties to talk on government formation after the verdict of a hung assembly. Both parties have been in talks for a possible post-poll alliance to cobble up a majority. However, PDP today came out with the idea of a grand alliance with its arch-rival National Conference and Congress to form a new government. The move has introduced a new element in the power sweepstakes in the valley. Well, on the second day of the Indian History Congress, historians advocated learning from Nehruvian values in social and economic development. They said India has been facing social inequality for ages, and in modern times there was a need to eradicate the menace instead of giving it a new impetus. The second day of the Indian History Congress was devoted to discussions on the relevance of the vision of India's first Prime Minister, Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru. It was asserted that communal division at the social and political levels needs to be annihilated to keep the pace of development, as this will hamper the trajectory of development of the country.
इस आज़ादी के लिए लड़ रहे थे, ऐसी आज़ादी बना दी है, तो हमने क्यों आज़ादी के लिए कोशिशें की? इस तरह का मुल्क बनाना है, तुम करोगे, वो भी करेंगे, वो और करेंगे, तुम और करोगे, क्या बनेगा मुल्क का? You could see this man really hurting and paining all over. तो समझ नहीं आया मैं क्या करूं?
Historians went down the memory lane and cited examples of Nehru's primacy for scientific and technological development. Nehru was a keen visitor of laboratories and was in constant touch with scientists.
That some of you should probably analyze historical perspectives and evaluate the achievements of science and technology in this country. The institutions which were built during Nehruvian time and later on, have they been able to deliver what they were expected to do?
His singular message from a welfare state concept is probably not relevant to every domain of economics today, but to public health, I would say even more relevant than ever. So it will surprise you today, out of 300 medical schools, 60% of medical research is the output of 5 institutions that were built in Nehru's times. The rest contribute a drop.
Many historians feel that such institutions have not been created after him because of a lack of vision and commitment in the governance process.
Historians are scared that the Nehruvian values of development for all and nation for all might come under attack. But now when we are talking of good governance and development, those values need to be strengthened, not to be demolished. Akhilesh Suman from Indian History Congress in JNU campus, Delhi.
And North India shivered under biting cold with temperatures dropping to record lows in several places. The temperature in the national capital was a little higher than yesterday at 4.8 degrees, but a low visibility due to dense fog caused much trouble to commuters. Almost all northbound trains are running late by hours.
The cold wave in northern India is showing no signs of easing. Several places in Uttar Pradesh and Punjab continued to shiver as dense fog affected normal life. Amritsar froze at 0 degrees. The temperature in the national capital was 3 notches below normal at 4.8 degrees. Nagpur too recorded its lowest temperature in 45 years as it shivered at 5 degrees Celsius. Chark in eastern Uttar Pradesh recorded a minimum temperature of 0.6 degrees Celsius. Dense fog enveloped the capital, delaying 98 trains and about 23 flights. Visibility was around 50 to 100 meters in the morning. Passengers face a tough time with trains and flights being rescheduled by hours.
हम लोग यहाँ पे सुबह 6 बजे आ गए हैं और सुबह 6 बजे से वेट कर रहे हैं ट्रेन का लगातार, लेकिन वो ट्रेन 11 बजे जाएगी यहाँ से, जो भी सूचना मिली है, और हमें बड़ी दिक्कत हो रही है क्योंकि हमने आगे टॉय ट्रेन भी बुक कर रखी है।
आज इतनी ठंड है, इतनी मॉर्निंग में हम लोग सुबह 5 बजे उठे तो बिल्कुल भी कुछ भी नहीं दिख रहा था, एकदम अंधेरा सा था।
Cold wave has compounded problems for the homeless. The death toll this month has gone up to 25 in Uttar Pradesh alone. In Delhi, 3 homeless persons were found dead on Monday morning. There was no respite from the bone-chilling conditions in the valley either. Temperatures in the valley and Ladakh region continue to remain several degrees below freezing point. Srinagar settled at minus 4.1 degrees Celsius, even as Kargil was the coldest place in the region, recording a low of minus 15.6 degrees. Met Department doesn't hold out much hope.
saying not much change can be expected in the next few days. Bureau Report, Rajya TV.
And some international news, and the Indonesian officials today said that the missing AirAsia plane is likely to be at the bottom of the sea. However, no wreckage has been found so far, and the search though still continues. Planes are once again hovering above the water day after day as a day after the plane disappeared in the Indonesian airspace with 162 people aboard. 5 nations, including India, have offered help in the massive search and rescue operation.
It's been more than a day that the AirAsia flight QZ8501 lost contact with the air traffic controllers, but there is still no sign of it. Search teams are scouring waters near Belitung Island in Java Sea, the area where the airliner lost contact with ATC. Indonesian search teams suspect that the plane is somewhere deep at the bottom of the sea.
Pastian kita sampai dengan saat ini kita masih dalam pencarian dari lost contact juga menuju sekarang ini ke Pulau Nangka dan rescue boat yang lain juga dari Tanjung Pinang, Palembang juga mencari.
India and China have also offered help to find the missing plane. They will join the search operation along with Singapore, Australia, Malaysia, South Korea and Indonesia.
30 ship operation in this area, and around 15 airplane and helicopters operation in this end. It is no issue, of course, in operation in the sea, especially in the bad weather like this. But government's president instructions to all our peoples to do the best.
The CEO of AirAsia has described the incident as his worst nightmare. The Indonesian government will now review the airline's Indonesia operations.
We haven't started talking about compensation. Our focus now is to take care of them and provide them what they require over the next few days. Regarding changes in the company, until we have a full investigation and we know what went wrong, that we really can't speculate. We don't really want to speculate until we find the aircraft.
Distraught relatives of the passengers wait anxiously for any news from the missing plane. The Singapore-bound flight QZ8501 lost contact with air traffic controllers less than an hour it took off from the Surabaya airport on Sunday, with 162 people on board. The plane's last detected position was 100 nautical miles southeast of Tanjung Pandan on Belitung Island. Bureau Report, Rajya TV.
And news from across the border, where hours after the Pakistani High Court suspended Zakiur Rahman Lakhvi's detention order, India hit back strongly, expressing concerns at the lack of an effective action against the mastermind behind the 26/11 terror attacks in Mumbai. Lakhvi had challenged his detention under a public security order after the Pakistan government rejected his plea seeking release a few days before. Now, he submitted a surety bond of 1 million rupees and is likely to be released any time now.
Zakiur Rahman Lakhvi, the mastermind behind 26/11 Mumbai terror attacks, may soon walk out of jail and be free after the Islamabad High Court suspended his detention order. A petition filed by Lakhvi's counsel claimed that legal requirements were not fulfilled in Lakhvi's detention. However, a Pak Foreign Ministry official said, and I quote, "Since the release of Lakhvi from jail will draw a lot of flack from the world, especially India, the Pakistani government may detain Lakhvi in any other case like it did in the case of LEJ chief Malik Ishaq." India has hit out strongly at the development. To raise India's concerns, Foreign Secretary Sujata Singh summoned Pak High Commissioner Abdul Basit for a meeting. She reiterated that India expects Pakistan to abide by its commitments in bringing the perpetrators of Mumbai 11 attacks to justice.
No, Lakhvi's release clearly indicates that Pakistan's fight against terror is still selective, and it still believes in the concept of a good Taliban, bad Taliban, irrespective of what General Raheel Sharif says or the government says.
Earlier on December 18th, the anti-terrorism court in Islamabad had granted bail to Lakhvi, citing lack of evidence against him in the Mumbai attacks case. But even before he could be released from the jail, the government detained him for 3 more months under a public maintenance order. It's not even a month since Peshawar school massacre, in which Taliban brutally killed over 100 children at gunpoint. Even though Pakistan has announced a crackdown on terrorists since then, its stance on Lakhvi has been perplexing. Bureau Report, Rajya TV.
Some sports now. Australians are on top in the third test at the MCG against India. The hosts took a lead of 326 runs with 3 more wickets left at the end of day 4. Sean Marsh is unbeaten after scoring a half-century. Earlier opener Chris Rogers also made a 69 to help his side pile up runs on India. Umesh Yadav, Ishan Sharma and R. Rashwin got 2 wickets each, while Shami picked up the last wicket of the day of Mitchell Johnson. Already 2 down in the 4-test series, India will face an uphill task tomorrow to save this test match.
His first couple of deliveries have been just... Still a test match which is hanging in balance. Good delivery.
Well, that's the news tonight. Good night.